This next session is going to be a panel presentation on the real theme of working together, and I think Natasha's presentation really set the groundwork in a very provocative and challenging way. How do we work together? How do we listen respectfully, work towards the common goals of making money as a business for the state and protect the consumers and those especially who are most vulnerable? And how can we keep having that conversation? So that's what we'll be talking about. And I'm going to start us off. First of all, responsible gambling is such a pervasive term that maybe we don't stop to think about it. And a friend of mine, when I was still in Ohio, who worked for the lottery, when they first came up with that tagline, "Please play responsibly," said she started getting calls from consumers saying, "What's this new game, play responsibly?" True story. So what is responsible gambling? And are we all like the blind man and the elephant, kind of looking at different pieces of it to try to figure out what that means? From a industry side, what does that mean in terms of practices? And Mary and Tamala will talk about the industry perspective on how do we engage in practices of responsible gambling. From a clinical side, it may mean something very different as I'm working with an individual who may be in recovery from a substance use disorder or a mental health disorder or have some serious gambling problems. How do we talk about responsible gambling from that clinical perspective? What is it from a public awareness perspective? So we'll try to put those all together. Public health approaches and regulatory approaches. When we think about these things, when we talk about legal drugs, prescription drugs, illegal drugs, alcohol, gambling, there are different regulatory approaches, and we have to look at what we're already doing in other areas and how can we learn and build on those in terms of age limits. We have age limits for alcohol, legal drugs, gambling, operating hours for bars, for casinos, 24/7, and now social media. You can't drink from your cell phone. You know, you can gamble from your cell phone. Differences. How many outlets do we have? How many bars do we have? How many liquor stores do we have? How many casinos? How many lottery outlets? Those are regulatory issues. Pricing and taxes. We put a tax on the casinos. We tax cigarettes, nicotine products to pay for some of the harm mitigation. Information and warnings, early and brief interventions, and as Mary talks about the VEP process, in Maryland, to get off of a 2-year exclusion, you have to see a counselor. I've seen some of these folks. I thought they would be down and out gamblers. They're not. They're at risk, moderate gamblers who spent a little more one time, and a friend said, "Well, why don't you exclude yourself?" "Yeah, that's a good idea." So that's an early intervention that I never anticipated from the industry side. Harm reduction. So when we talk about responsible gambling from a clinical perspective, from a public health perspective, we're talking about minimizing harms. And the declaration mostly focused on substance use disorders, an alternative response to traditional interventions. Not the zero tolerance, not abstinence only, but how can we engage people before they hit absolute rock bottom? How can we make this the decade of harm reduction for the gambling field where we're all working together? So here are all the messages, warnings on cigarette packages, seat belts, don't drive and drink, all the warnings we're getting. In Ohio, their new campaign is Be the 95%, since we know that about 5% of the adult population are going to have serious problems. How can you stay in that 95%? where it's not going to ruin your life. So that's a harm reduction message. How can we minimize the harm? The ladies riding the bus to the casino and their tips for how to keep it safe. So we can get the message out in ways people can actually hear, who don't necessarily identify themselves as pathological or having a disorder, but need to keep this moderate and safe in their lives. There is research on barriers, the ones in the person, I can do it on my own. I can resolve this. I can figure this out. I'm too ashamed. I'm too embarrassed. What's wrong with me? I'm not putting a chemical in. How can I explain this? And I'm too overwhelmed. I'll solve it once I get a handle on the problems. But we have to look at our service center factors, whether they're where we're providing interventions and prevention, and how do we keep people at a distance by our practices? How inviting are we to have the conversation in our treatment centers, in our prevention programs, in our criminal justice programs, in our social service departments? How do we invite people into the conversation without stigmatizing, labeling? Years ago, Bill Eadington was a leader in the field out of the University of Las Vegas, who he has he's now no longer with us, but his conference lives on, and it's going to be in 2 weeks in Las Vegas, International Conference on Gaming and Risk-Taking, where people from around the world come, and it's the industry, and it's the clinicians, and it's preventionists, and it really is coming together to talk about these issues. He talked about the industry going from denial to full commitment, and full commitment is partnering, as we'll be talking about here today. So Tamala Law is I now consider a really dear friend, and she really gets it. She's the Director of Compliance for MGM National Harbor Casino. She's a native Louisianan and has worked in the casino gaming industry for, over 22 years. Yeah, serving as a leader in player services, finance, slot operations before finding her calling in regulatory compliance. As Director of Compliance, one of her responsibilities is to oversee the responsible gaming program. This includes monitoring, implementing, measuring adherence, acting as a conduit for information related to responsible gaming. She received her bachelor's in business management from Wiley College, her MBA from Bethel University in McKenzie, Tennessee. She's a member of the Society for Corporate Compliance and Ethics Personnel, the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, that sounds scary, and a Maryland Council on Responsible Gaming board member. So she puts her time and energy where her mouth is, and we really appreciate that. Outside of professional interests, she enjoys traveling, shopping, spending time with family and friends in Louisiana and Texas. So with that as kind of the foundation, let me have Tamala come up and talk to her commitment and the industry's commitment to working with us on responsible gambling.
Thank you, Lori. Good morning, everyone. It's so warm and welcoming. I love that. I'm very honored to be able to stand before you and share with you the casino industry's commitment and how we fulfill our commitment to responsible gaming. First, I would like to say thank you to Dr. Basman for making that statement this morning that we have to work together to address responsible gaming. The casinos are not the enemy. We are not anti-responsible gaming. We are truly dedicated to every aspect of responsible gaming. Even before an individual visits the casino, you can find information about our responsible gaming program by viewing our website. So every casino has this information posted for your review. The one that's posted now is MGM, of course. MGM adheres to AGA, which is the American Gaming Association's Code of Conduct for Responsible Gaming. And we've done so since it was in effect, since it became effective in September of 2004. The AGA's Code of Conduct represents a broad commitment by the gaming industry to make the public aware of responsible gaming resources and to incorporate responsible gaming into our business operations. So this is done by the following 6 standards, and we'll go through those. So the first one is our pledge to employees. Responsible gaming training is for every employee of the casino. Most of the time, this is done at the beginning of an employee's career, on their first day at the casino in what we call new hire orientation. During that training, employees understand what is responsible gaming and who it affects, the impact on the individual, the family, and the workplace, what are the signs, and how can they find help. And then if that customer needs help, what does the employee do? What is the employee role? And Mary will talk more about those details when she comes up. So this training is done at the beginning of a person's career with the company, and also it's an annual training. In addition to the annual training, we also have communication throughout the casino in reference to responsible gaming. And one of the ways that MGM communicates this information is through our company e-newsletter. So in this newsletter, it goes out to all of our nearly 20 properties as soon as MGM National Harbor opens and Mass. And it actually gives different articles about responsible gaming, as well as different procedures, different fun facts. It's just a way of keeping everyone engaged. We don't want the employees to forget that we want responsible gaming customers. So we also post responsible gaming materials in the back of the house for employees. This is done so employees can be knowledgeable of responsible gaming in case they're asked questions from customers, but it's also there for the employee if they need assistance with problem gaming, because employees of the casinos are not exempt from having issues with gaming. And I'm sure Mary will mention that a little bit later as well. So our second point is our pledge to the public. We enforce laws that require an individual to be 21 years of age to gamble. We also educate the public through our website, as I mentioned earlier, through advertisement, also through informational sessions throughout Responsible Gaming Week, as well as Problem Gaming Awareness Month. And understanding that responsible gaming is serious, but during those times, it allows the employees and our customers to really kind of have fun with. We get the information out there in a fun manner. We have tables set up for customers that can come over and understand how to actually play a blackjack game responsibly, how the slot machine works. We talk through how that works. We have employees there to demonstrate those items, as well as the employees get to share information. We wear buttons so customers can ask, what are you talking about? What is responsible gaming? And that gives us an opportunity to give them literature and explain to them what responsible gaming it's all about. Let's see. Oh, we definitely partnerships with our other organizations in the community. We definitely do that. We're working with, I'm in Prince George's County, so I'm definitely meeting people, and we are actually working with them so we can be on the same page when it comes to responsible gaming and how we want to handle that in our communities. Financial support, we don't just talk about it. We give generously to the state and national conferences on responsible gaming, so we can make sure that we have that ongoing training and research that is definitely needed. Our pledge to our guests. We are responsible for making sure information is visible. We want to make sure that if someone needs help or if they see a brochure, they can pick it up. So we make sure that we have that throughout the casino. You can find that anywhere from at the card centers to the cashier's cage. We also have them on all of our TRUs, which is our ticket redemption units, and our ATMs. So we try to make sure that there is information there in case someone needs it, and as well as if someone asks an employee can easily retrieve that information for the guest. As I mentioned earlier, we also have our policies on our website. And most importantly, we have the opportunity for our guests to request in writing the revocation of their privileges. And we refer to that as self-limited program. So the self-limited program is enforced by the company. The self-exclusion program is enforced by the state of Maryland. So the self-limit is something that the casino, we came up with on our own, and it actually just allows the customer to say, I do not want to get a credit line with you, I don't want to cash checks here, I don't want to receive any mail. So it just allows the customer to come in, they bring their set amount of disposable income, maybe it's $100. Once they play that $100, they can leave. So that's one of the programs that we have. So responsible gaming also includes underage and unattended minors. The casinos really make diligent efforts to try to keep underage individuals out of the casino. Despite all of the signs we have posted, even on the doors as you open or walking through the hallways before you get to the gaming floor, occasionally underage individuals do make it to our casino floor. So for that reason, we try to make sure that our employees are trained to and have procedures in place to deal with underage individuals, as well as unattended minors that may be found in our parking lots, and alcohol consumption for minors. Which brings us to the next slide that talks about responsible alcohol beverages. There is an additional training provided for employees that directly serve alcohol. Some industries also require other departments, other guest-facing departments, to also take this training. The training is different depending on if you are directly serving, you take a 4-hour training. If you are guest-facing, you take a 2-hour training. This is not done by anyone on property. This is done by an outside vendor. The 2 vendors that I know are approved in Maryland is TIPS, which stands for Training for Intervention Procedures, and CARE, which is Controlling Alcohol Risk Effectively. During this training, employees get to understand the laws, the county laws, the state laws, federal laws surrounding alcohol, as well as how individuals are affected by alcohol and the signs of intoxication. It also helps the employees to not knowingly serve an alcohol beverage to a minor or somebody that's visibly intoxicated, as well as it helps them make a diligent effort not to permit gaming to someone that is visibly intoxicated. So our sixth standard is responsible advertising. Casinos do not market to anyone that has a self-limit or self-excluded status. Before any promotional offers are disseminated, the names must be cross-referenced with the company's database. Well, I guess you say, well, how does that happen? If someone comes to the casino and requests to be self-limited, there's a document that they complete. And also, if someone wants to be self-excluded, there's a document that is completed as well. Both of those documents have to be, the information from that has to be entered into our database within 72 hours of receiving that information. And then that person cannot receive any marketing activity after 45 days. Well, why 45 days? Normally, you know, with marketing, items go out well in advance. So I may sign up to be self-excluded on today, but mail for an event has already gone out weeks ahead. So that's why the 45-day period is on the marketing material. However, if someone receives that material, they still cannot use it. So if they're excluded, they receive, say, a voucher to come and get free slot play. If they come into the casino, they will not be able to use it. It will definitely deny them. So those are like the 6 standards that the casinos follow. Hopefully that was somewhat enlightening. We understand that there is the potential for gaming addictions. But that's not who we market to. Our offers and our services are for the recreational gambler. So that's what we gear our services toward. So our message is simple. We want people to come to our casino for the reason of just simply having fun.
Mary Drexler, who is one of my former partners in Connecticut, is Responsible Gambling Program Coordinator for the Maryland Lottery and Gaming Control Agency. One of her primary roles is oversight of the agency's Voluntary Exclusion program for casinos and for the lottery, and soon the licensed bingo facilities, which our clients call casinos. She works with the gaming industry in Maryland to ensure facilities engage in responsible gambling practices. Before moving to Maryland, she was Assistant Director of the Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling, oversaw the day-to-day operations of the Connecticut Council in areas of problem gambling, prevention, awareness, and intervention. She's been in social services since 1979, and several years of experience in nonprofit management. She holds a Master of Social Work degree from the University of Connecticut.
I'm a little shorter than most of the people up here. My name is Mary Drexler. I am the Responsible Gambling Program Coordinator for the state of Maryland's Lottery and Gaming Agency. I've been with them about probably a year and a half and have had experience in the area of problem gambling in the past, which has been very helpful when you move to the industry side to really work with the industry on some of these responsible gambling guidelines. My primary presentation is going to be on the voluntary exclusion program itself, but I want you to kind of know or have an overview of the other things as I do in this role. Some of it as Tamala has expressed, is I try and work closely with the compliance directors at all of the casinos on really understanding not just the voluntary exclusion program, but making sure that materials are visible in all the facilities. In many of our facilities, even on the video lottery terminals, you'll see a scrolling message that runs pretty frequently with the 1-800 number and to play responsibly within the facility. So that's one of the things we do. Training, I like to go out to all the casinos to observe, usually once a year, the responsible gambling training, the training on the voluntary exclusion program, see if any of their employees have any questions about what is expected or what it really means to do responsible gambling, and to understand better problem gamblers. So that we work on. I work with not just the casinos, but with the now 13 licensed bingo halls here in the state. About 6 of them actually have more than 50 of those video lottery terminals, so it kind of looks like a mini casino. And right now with our voluntary exclusion program, we only have one for the lottery, and we have another one for the casinos. We will be doing one for the 6 large bingo halls, hopefully by the end of the summer. We have gotten actually several requests from individuals who are already on the list who have found their way to the bingo halls, and there's no exclusion program there, so they're still running themselves into problems there. And the other thing that the casino industry does, and so do the bingo halls, is they're required to do an annual report on their responsible gambling practices. That's something I take a look at annually. If there are any changes, I ask why those changes, what those changes are doing, are they helpful? So we work on that. And I have been lucky to work with Lori on some training of this program, which we're going to get into now, and with licensed counselors across the state. And I will talk about the removal process in a little while, because there has been some training on how that process works to come off the voluntary exclusion list. So I just wanted to let you know, the casinos actually do some really good responsible gambling in all their messaging and their advertising. Part of that is because it is in state statute. So I wanted you to know what the statute was and the regulation. So, but they do it. I have never had a problem with working with the industry since I've been down here in Maryland, working with us together to ensure that that 95% can gamble recreationally so that there aren't any problems. And employees and management of those establishments really have been very open to any suggestions that we've had as regulators of the industry. So that is where the regulation comes from. Let me talk a little bit about this program. And I said if I don't know enough about it by now, I shouldn't be in my position. Because we currently, well, this is, we started in voluntary exclusion, began in 2011, and for the lottery, it began in 2013. As of April 30th, we had 1,137 people that were on the casino voluntary exclusion list. I can tell you right now I'm up to 1,210. So in the month of May, we've gotten more people on the list. As of April 30th, there were 188 individuals signed up for the lottery exclusion program, which isn't as advertised as the casino program. There are brochures at our main offices. There are brochures. Right now we have about 4,500 retailers. That's probably going to go up to almost 5,000 by the end of this year, people who will be doing the retail out in the community. So the program is growing. I think it's because we're getting out there that the program exists. I think it hasn't been talked about enough. I'm not sure counselors have been really aware if they're working with clients with even mental health or other addictions, that this program does exist and can be helpful, because we all know that you can have one addiction and you're doing really well with working on recovery in that addiction, and then you go right into gambling or some other addiction. So I think that's important to know. Enrollment, it is a voluntary program, okay? When people call and want to come in and see me, which they can do at our main offices in Baltimore, I make it really clear to them, if they want to have a family member come with them, that's fine, but they do not go in the room with me and the individual. I need to be sure it's voluntary. That is how it is written in the statute. And it is confidential. So they could have a family member out there, halfway through they say, I don't want to do this. It's not my place to tell the person out there. It is very much, confidentiality is really important to us. For the most part, people do want to be there. It's hard because there are spouses, there are sons, there are daughters who call me and say, I want to sign them up, and we cannot do that. I express to them to give them information, have the individual call. I'm willing to talk to them a little. And our application, which I'll get into in more detail, actually has now an option for those who sign up for it to try and get them to gambling assessment or treatment quicker at the beginning of the process versus the end of the process. It is administered by an MLGCA staff. That stands for Maryland Lottery Gaming Control Agency. It's just too long to say. They can sign up for 2 years or life. They cannot ask to come off the list for at least 2 years. The way the regulation reads now, even if they sign up for life, they can request to come off after 2 years. I don't say that to everybody who signs up for life, but they can do that. They can call me and request to come off. They fill out this application. We have staff at every casino 24/7. So they can call, make an appointment with me, but I'm out doing this kind of stuff sometimes, so I let them know to go directly to security as they enter the facility. They will get our staff from the back of the house. They'll go to the back of the house and help them fill out the application. We recently engaged the language line, Language Solutions, because we do have quite a few individuals that we've noted that don't speak English. So we have a contract with the state, with Language Solutions, so we can help those people who don't understand. And we want to make sure everyone understands. So we make sure of that. If we suspect that they're under any influence, like they're swaying as they're filling out the application or they can't write their name, we won't go through with it. We'll tell them, they give them my card and say, contact Mary at a later date or come back to me when you understand what this process is, because it definitely needs to be voluntary. When an individual signs up for the program, again, I said it's confidential. You can't call me up and find out. The only people is when we get subpoenaed, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes, to go to court or for our records because someone's going to court, then we do share that information with the state's attorney's office. But we consider this a very important aspect of the program. I am the only one who has access to the full list, along with what I send out, which can become very tedious every day or every other day. When I enter into the computer the information, then I send out to all the casinos what we call a advisory. So they have a picture of the person with the main name, phone numbers, address, last 4 digits of Social Security, and they need those at the casinos at security because they're now on the list. So they have an updated list, and we have an auditing department at the lottery who will check to make sure that's all up to date when they go and visit the casinos. So we do that, and they also get a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet with more information on that individual to keep on file. And usually it's security, correct me if I'm wrong, Tamala, and surveillance that has those books and cage available, because we'll talk about how do you identify someone who may be, you can't memorize everybody's face. You'd be amazed at how people can change their appearance when they want to get back on the casino floor. So we can't expect that we're going to pick it up all the time. So it is there, and it is the individual's responsibility to stay away. You know, we're not going to be tracking them. We don't put a GPS on them to find out whether they went down to Rocky Gap or now have headed to Ocean City versus, going up to Hollywood. So, again, when do you identify them, the violations? When they show their ID, it should be cross-checked against the list. Anytime a patron wins a jackpot over $1,200 and they're on that list, sorry, you don't get it. The money flows through the lottery back to the state's problem gambling fund through our Department of Health and mental hygiene, and our behavioral health department. So there are some very unhappy people on the floor if they happen to have won that jackpot of $1,200 or more, who said they just didn't remember signing up for the program. Anytime they, and for the lottery, the same kind of standard kind of holds. If they are on the lottery list and they win 600 or more, they don't collect. That goes to the state's problem gambling fund for treatment and prevention. So once they're on that list, they're on that list. And the money comes back through to that fund. So again, other things are anytime a patron attempts to cash a check, goes to the cashier's cage, anything that you have to show some identification for, they are not going to be able to do that. And if you're found there, they are not subject, but they will be arrested for criminal trespassing. And we enforce that with the casinos. They do get a citation for criminal trespassing. I am not a czar. I do not want to see them locked up for 6 years because they happened to walk on the casino floor. But what we try and do, and what I've been trying to do over the past year, is work with the state's attorney's office, because before it was just probation before a PBJ, probation before justice. Now they get usually 16 to 24 hours of community service that we're requesting they do. And some of the judges have said, yes, I suggest you get a problem gambling assessment. But judges are very difficult to work with across the state of Maryland. I'm not sure they were any better up in Connecticut, but I am finding and starting to make inroads with the judges on that. So they're told that right up front. Do not go on the gaming floor in any of these facilities. Horseshoe is a Caesars property. So when they sign out in Maryland, for Maryland to be excluded, they can't go to any Caesars property across the country, and that's their corporate policy. MGM will be the same. When they sign up here in Maryland, once MGM opens down in Prince George's County, any of the facilities owned by them, they will not be able to enter. So it does kind of keep them from trying to figure out which state they can hip, hop, and jump. But I do get lots of phone calls from people saying, Mary, do you know which ones I can go into? And I said, well, that's really not my job to tell you which ones you should enter and not enter. I'm trying to make you more responsible. So other program components that I do is I started when I came to Maryland not long ago to do a 6-month follow-up with individuals who are on the list. And then I'm hoping it's about time now for some of those to be an 18-month follow-up. And I think it's important. The information I'm getting back is very interesting on the amounts of money some of these individuals have lost, and what their income is, because I ask both. And, we're making $20,000 to $50,000, but I've lost $120,000 over the last year, the last 20 months. So people are definitely not going with the money, those who have the problem, not going with the money they can afford to lose. And then, I have done some mental health substance abuse provider training on the Voluntary Exclusion program to increase awareness for their clients. We have a table in there. There are lots of materials that you can look at for that. Training of licensed counselors for the removal process, which I can tell you a little bit about. And I think we'll go backwards for a second. The actual removal process is a little different. They are not automatically off after 2 years. They have to contact me. They are sent a packet that they have to fill out with a very detailed cover letter. Even though I get lots of calls, I put all the detail in there of where they can go. There's a demographic sheet, which everybody always asks for. There is a workbook, and it's really a self-evaluating workbook of where they think their gambling activity is at. They are to take that workbook. There is a form that has to be signed by a licensed counselor whose job it is to review that workbook with them and make recommendations. Either, yeah, it seems like they've got it together, Mary, they can come off the list. Sometimes, occasionally, I will get one that will say, I recommend they go to 6 GA sessions or whatever. And I try and enforce that and say to the person, I'd be happy to take you off, but why don't you try going to GA for a certain number of visits? Let me know when you've done that, provide some documentation, we'll get you off the list. just to try and get them in the system. And with the removal process and talking with Lori, we look at that as a way to maybe get some people into the treatment system, because when they're talking, they're actually meeting with a counselor. So it might entice, maybe I really do have a problem. So I think that that's really important. Lottery, I think we've already gone over. They can't win more than 600. Right now, you'll see a lot of commercials or radio spots with the casinos really advertising the helpline or the helpline number. I don't think you see a lot of those with the lottery commercials, but you will. The lottery is now committed to becoming part of the World Lottery Association, which means you're going to start to see, hopefully end of year, early next year, everything tagged, television commercials, radio spots. The lottery will be having to tag those with responsible gambling messages, especially the helpline. And my VEP upcoming, we just made a decision. I've talked with the 6 largest facilities that have 50 gaming machines or more, VLTs. They, by the end of the summer of 2016, will have a voluntary exclusion program. Same thing, if they win a jackpot of $1,200 or more, that goes to the state problem gambling fund. They don't have the security of a casino, but they will ask people to leave if they're on the list. But there will be no criminal trespassing at this point as part of that program. It's too hard to enforce at this point. And I wanted to end with just a little reminder. There is something that we call the Maryland Alliance for Responsible Gambling that is here in Maryland, which really is a great group that gets together, and anybody else who might be interested in joining us on these quarterly meetings. The Maryland Lottery and Gaming, we try and bring together the community, the problem gambling community, industry. In this meeting, there's a representative, a management representative from all 5 casinos. The Maryland Lottery is there. Our director of, our managing director of gaming is there. I am there. We have the Maryland Council for Problem Gambling represented, the Center of Excellence represented. We have Senator Klossmeyer and representative, and my brain is going out, but we also have a state representative, and I apologize to him somewhere down in Annapolis that his name is missing. We have representation from corrections, and we do meet quarterly. We talk about things that we can do together. You know, I'm really pleased at how that's going. Usually we have anywhere from 20 to 25 people at each of the meetings, and we've really done some good stuff like with National Problem Gambling Awareness Month and working together for advertising and helping each other out, the industry and the problem gambling community. And that is all I have to say. If you have questions later.
Deb Haskins, other than being a dear friend and colleague, is a counselor educator and received her PhD in pastoral counseling from Loyola College in Maryland, a licensed clinical professional counselor, and an approved supervisor. Previously, she served as vice chair and chair of the Credentials Committee for the Board of Professional Counselors and Therapists in Maryland. Dr. Haskins is a national certified gambling counselor and a board-approved clinical consultant, the National Council on Problem Gambling's table with all the certification information on it. And she serves nationally on cultural competency, gambling, addiction recovery, and mental health topics, presents all around the country, and publishes in the area of cultural diversity and problem gambling. She assists faith and spiritual communities with incorporating mental health and focuses on mental health delivery beyond traditional formats, and just is such an asset to us in the field and us in the state.
It's wonderful to see you all in this room, and I just want to encourage you. I know that this is a lot of information that we're throwing at you, but just stay with us. We're really excited that you're here. I'm going to be just talking about, for the next 10 minutes, about how do we work together with the community, and in looking at different parts of our community that we want to work together. So what you see on the slide is just a small representation of some of the opportunities. We have rural parts of our community throughout the state. We have urban communities throughout the state. We have suburban communities. We have a lot of faith-based communities, and I'm going to touch on that. in spiritual communities. We have a lot of folks who are living in, unfortunately, material poverty. They just lack the resources, and gambling is a way for them to access resources. And so we know that. We know that we have a lot of people from different cultural communities. So the hands that you see here, you know, just coming together to work together regardless of who we are, our cultural backgrounds, our class backgrounds, our geographical backgrounds. We want to be thinking across the state, how can we work together? The majority of us in the room are counselors or clinicians, preventionists, but we also, in gaming representatives and et cetera, but we want to be thinking also, how can we move even further? And that's where I've spent my career primarily, focused on the community. The mission of the Maryland Council on Problem Gambling is 3 A's: advocacy, awareness, and assistance. And so we work together with a lot of constituencies, the Center of Excellence, as Mary said, the Maryland Alliance, et cetera. One of the new goals that we accomplished that I'm really happy about, and I have to admit that I was hesitant, was when we asked Tammy Law to be on our board. And she has been a phenomenal addition to our board, because most of us have seen, counselors in particular, have seen the industry as the enemy. And what I have learned just from having a board member from the industry is that we can work together even more effectively. And so I'm really happy and excited about that. So I'm going to be talking about, in my few minutes, how to reach what we consider, quote unquote, at-risk problem gambling communities, and how can we do advocacy and provide support. But I want to just say the way that I think that we can approach this very, very, very briefly, because I don't have a lot of time, is what I try to do when I'm working with communities or when we're working as a council with communities, is first we want to change our view. I think we're going to have to take a view change. I don't like the word at risk. I like the word or the language of communities of opportunity. And I want to invite all of us in the room to maybe do some vocabulary shift, because what happens is many of these communities have already been told for so long that they are at risk. And so what does that mean? It means that they're less likely to seek us out for assistance when they're in trouble. And an example of this is last week I was invited to be a host guest on WOLB, I guess, AM radio. And I talked for about 40 minutes about problem gambling and how gambling can affect communities and families. And they had a time where people could call in. You know, how many of you like sports radio? All right, I'm a sports radio fan. I haven't been able to call in yet, but I want to know why they don't feature the WNBA more. And, you know, you don't even talk about it as if the women aren't playing. But anyway, I'm on the radio station and I'm talking about problem gambling and the impact to families and communities. And there was an opportunity for people to call in for help. Well, guess what? Do you think anybody called in for help? How many of you think, raise your hand if you think I got one call. Right. No one called. And so my take-home message at the end was to say, when the radio host thanked me for educating them in the time that I had, was just to say, first of all, I talked about what we're doing. I mentioned, you know, of course, where I'm coming from, the council, but we also have a Center of Excellence of Problem Gambling. We have the self-exclusion. We have a lot of different resources in the state. We have GA. We have a lot of opportunities for healing. And I talked about the 1-800-GAMBLER hotline. But I also said to the listeners is I'm not surprised that no one called, because even to call a radio station feels uncomfortable for people. Number one, if they don't see that gambling is a problem, they're not going to call the radio station. So that's the first issue. The second point is that maybe someone will recognize my voice. and that I don't feel comfortable with. But what I try to assure them of is that on the 1-800-GAMBLE hotline, you're going to be talking to a person who's well-trained, and it is confidential. I want to assure you of that, okay? So I go back to, we want to just recognize that there are a lot of people out there across the state of Maryland and other states who need opportunities for us to provide some more support. What that means is that we're going to have to do the second point. We're going to need to modify our existing health paradigms to reach communities that are less likely to access our awareness, our prevention, and our treatment. I'm probably going to be in heaven or some, I hope one day. Let me just tell you, they're not coming in to see me enough. And some research studies have said I'm probably going to be in the by and by before people actually, they see their pastors, they see their family members, they see their spiritual leaders. They're not coming to see me. And a couple years ago when I realized this, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm working this hard. I'm never going to be able to provide the support to people who really need it. So I'm going to be in the by and by down, in the sky. And, there's still going to be this issue and challenge and opportunity. So think about where you function in your practices, in your behavioral health agencies, in your schools, if you're in the corrections facilities working. Think about how can you look at what we've been trained as the models that work and expand it, modify, do some creative change in those models. And I think this next point is I want to encourage all of us to move outside our comfort zone. Okay? And I say that because as counselors, because only a small percentage of people are going to ever come in and see one of us in this room. Are you aware of that? Right? Because that's already what we know. That's why we have to push out. We have to go out. We have to go out. It's called outreach for a reason. It's because we're supposed to not do outreach in our offices and our agencies. We're supposed to go like out, 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 right? So let's go out, out. All right, so how do we do this? So the first step is, who are the stakeholders that we can partner with? There are a lot of stakeholders. So we have youth groups in our community. We have schools. Our preventionist, Carl Roberson, does wonderful with the smart choices, but he can't do it by himself. All of us in this room have opportunities in the communities where you are based to align with a community stakeholder. Start to build some relationships with those stakeholders. Provide your services in the school. Ask to see if you can come to a PTA meeting. Can you come in and talk about stress management? And while you're talking about stress management, include substance abuse issues and problem gambling as the way that people respond to stress. Look at the elders in your community and see how you can develop partnerships. We also have a whole millennium culture now that's not going to access treatment and services in the way that we have been trained to do. So we're going to have to look at how we can offer more support using social media. And some of us are already looking at that. Our barbershops, our hairdressers, our hairstylists, they are the counselors in the community. They are the ones that are doing the counseling every day unless they close on Mondays. I know that. Okay? Monday's the day that you're not. And look, my hairstylist was making space for me on Tuesday. I just found out last week that she's usually closed on Tuesday. So she was being awfully nice. But I hear, and I know you hear, those of you who have the privilege of going to get your hair done, you know that that's where those are first-line responders. So that brings me to this, and I'm going to run out of time, but I want to talk just very briefly about faith communities because that's one of our initiatives on the council. We're doing more strategic planning to restructure. Our website is down and under construction because we're spending some time really trying to do some more self-examination and figure out what we're going to focus on for the future. But this is one of our initiatives, and the faith-based community are first-line responders. They're the ones. And so I want to just show you this real quickly. I hope that I can, just to illustrate this point. Uh-oh, it says you cannot. Okay. If I could click this on, but it doesn't look like it's going to allow me to. I was going to play a song very quickly just so it's called Help by the group Mary Mary. Any of you heard that song? And basically she's singing what? Help. And she's singing to her God of her understanding and saying, you know, I need you, Lord. I need you. I need you to come and help me. I'm having some challenges. So that's an opportunity for us. I want to just share very briefly, in your packet I included a couple of resources. Gambling Recovery Ministries, we're going to be collaborating with them. My good friend and colleague, Reverend Janet Jacobs, has gotten this program going in the state of Indiana, and she's more than happy. If you go to the website, you can get her information, and she's more than happy to provide materials. We're going to be providing that as part of the council work, but you can contact her now if you'd like. Also in your packet, you'll see a handout, the ACGCCB, and I want to commend my colleague Jeff Beck because he and Reverend Janet Jacobs have worked together to put together a clergy lay minister certification program, and they're kind of combining, and I'm probably not doing the best to really represent it, but this effort, if you read it, you can see that this is a certification opportunity if you have clergy and lay persons in the communities to get them more aware about problem gambling and equip them to provide services. Also, I just wanted to note, I have an article on Baylor University Christian Ethics. You can just Google that website, you can go to it, and there's a feature on gambling culture, and it tells you specifically how to work with congregations and spiritual places in your communities and gives you some suggestions. And so how much time do I have? 2 seconds? 2 minutes? Great. Okay, so very quickly, when you're working with other cultural contexts like urban versus rural versus suburban, you want to do real talk. We want to address real life issues that they experience. And I know that our wonderful speaker this afternoon, my great colleague Victor Ortiz, will be speaking about this. But, you know, they're dealing with issues like finding a job, underemployment, racism, multiple systems that they're engaged in that need to be part of the service delivery, transportation. You know, demonstrate that you can do what the young people call what? Keep it 100, right? Keep it 100. If they sense that we can't keep it 100, we're not being real with them, then they're not coming back. And as much as possible when we're working together with communities, use a strengths-based model. Again, as I said in the earlier point, because many are already pathologized, and what problem gambling does is to add one more stigma to what they're already experiencing. Okay? So that's really not probably, I could say more, but just because of time, please send me if you want more information or follow up. Let me give you my email because it's not in there. I forgot. DGH, my name is Deborah Gladden Haskins, Mosaic, the word Mosaic stands for diversity, @gmail.com. And because our website is down right now and we're trying to get things rebranded, et cetera, you can send me an email. More than happy. The board members will participate and help us get information out to you. One of the initiatives is we want to have a speakers bureau, and I'm hoping that when we send the invitation out that many of you would consider being in the speakers bureau, because it would then be a way to send well-trained folks like you all and us out into the community. It also will give those of you, how many of you plan to get national certification at some point? Okay, great. It would allow you to count those hours towards the national certification. You need 50 minimum counseling hours. The other 50 can be basically psychoeducation on problem gambling, et cetera, community outreach. And then there is a handout in your packet from Reverend Jacobs' work with a host of suggestions on outreach. 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 Come on, do your exercise. outreach, outreach. All right, give yourselves a hand.
I think this hit in the beginning, but is there an industry standard definition of problem gambling or gambling addiction? And another question is, what has the industry done that goes above and beyond that required by law to address this issue? Thank you.
I think, obviously we do have the law that helps us with some of the responsible gambling messaging. But I think the industry is starting to recognize that they need to be doing more, even in their commercials, their radio advertising, to get the message out about where they can go and how they can get help. I know here in Maryland, it's pretty good on the casino side. I'm currently working with the lottery to be doing that same kind of responsible gambling messaging because it's not necessarily required by law. So we're going to increase that in the upcoming year. We've also tried to work very closely with the Center of Excellence here in Maryland. During Problem Gambling Awareness Month, we gave them a lot of our television and radio spots to run their videos, to actually have radio time, because I think it's necessary for us to give more attention to it. And we are trying to work on that, not just being National Problem Gambling Awareness Month. We're trying to get that to be spread out over the course of the year.
Hello, my name is Julie. I think my question is for Mary.
Okay.
If I hear you correctly, you said the only way you monitor people who are under exclusion for lottery is when they win. Okay, let's assume
Yes, well, no. Number one, at security checkpoints throughout, when you have to
No,
come
I'm talking
in.
about the lottery, not the...
Oh, the lottery.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't do the security piece on the lottery. With almost 5,000 retailers. Retailers aren't really wanting to become law enforcement, so the only way we can get them is if they win a prize of 600 or more. We have not come up with a better system as of yet.
Yeah, that's the reason why I'm asking this question, because if I'm under exclusion and I win, I can give somebody else a ticket, that ticket to cash for me.
Of course you could, and we would, it's a lot easier to do it when you're dealing with the lottery side. Say that my son bought it, it wasn't anything that I
Okay.
did, yeah.
I think what's important is these aren't designed to be
Proof,
foolproof or
yeah.
fail-safe systems. They're just one piece in the whole picture, and somebody can utilize those to help their commitment to not gambling irresponsibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really intrigued by what is done in Canada that the speaker said this morning about that if there's a certain algorithm that gets tripped, that a counselor comes right to the machine and the machine stops working. Is that something we might be able to do in Maryland?
Might be a question for Senator Klausmeier. But, I think we can look at some of the practices that other countries are engaging in and have that conversation and push it to, can we do something like that? How can we get better at? And that's what this group is for, is thinking outside that box and learning from what works and how it works in other venues. So absolutely.
Canada has always been a little bit ahead of the game on even having done some work up in Connecticut. A lot of the casinos were going up there because they actually have counselors there on the gaming floor, like in a little office or whatever. So if someone needs help right away, there's also a counselor there, a better opportunity for getting an assessment. Will it happen someday? I don't know. We could see.
But can I also add that having been to Nova Scotia a couple of years ago, I learned that they still struggle with reaching some of the opportunity communities. So I think this is just the reality that some of these challenges are more complex, and even those countries that are doing great work and have had wonderful resources, they still are kind of in the same place as we are in this country with how do we reach people who typically are never going to come in and see a counselor.
The
My question is for Tamla. When you talked about training employees in the casinos, you said that you train them so they can identify people who are experiencing problems, maybe they are over gambling at that point in time. Do you have people who are dedicated to doing that? Or it is the general staff who do that? Because if I'm cleaning the tables, you can tell if I didn't clean the table, I could get in trouble with that. If somebody is having trouble and I pass them, you can't really tie me to it because it's not my responsibility. So do you have people dedicated to tracking people and providing those kind of services?
Yes, great question. So we do, and it depends on, I've worked in 3 properties here in the state of Maryland. And one of those properties, we actually have a dedicated staff that actually goes through additional training to understand the signs, to know what to say, to be able to go over and have those conversations. For the general population or all the employees, it's pretty just general information. And if it gets to the point where you need more information or they can't handle it, they're told to go see their supervisor or also call security, because security works closely with Mary's team and the MLGCA compliance agents who are on property 24 hours, who are actually the ones that are responsible for sitting down, going over the application process with the individual.
Hi, my name is Yvette. I graduated from Loyola too. So the question I have is, with regulating gambling, I guess defining what it is, if there is a governing body who can do that, and I guess it's kind of convoluted kind of question, but I was just so concerned when I thought about, you know, for instance, when you had up there that our senator, which is awesome, pushed for that 21-year-old restriction, but there are things that kind of sprinkle in gambling in little areas that can still touch children, which concern me. Like, for instance, you can't have a little bit of alcohol in something that's called like a wine cooler, and it's still regulated. But you can have a little bit of gambling and in-app purchases in the kids' games and things like that. And it's like, cool, and it really looks like a little slot machine in a game that's about Sims. I don't know if you heard about that. Had nothing to do with gambling. It just popped in my mind. So it's still targeting the youth in a very kind of sneaky way. So I'm wondering if is there a governing body that could look at that kind of stuff and try to regulate that?
In video games and, you know, social media games, no. But I mean, I think that's that edge of technology, and the millennial generation is even getting bored with the multi-line slot machines. So there'll be new technologies that are more interactive, more of what they're used to with their Xboxes and PlayStations. So we have to be creative in what protections can be put in for kids playing Candy Crush, you know, and or adults for that matter. So we've got a really task ahead of us keeping up with the technology in many ways. So you're right.
Thank you.
I just had a question. When you're talking about outreach, an idea was coming to mind about if there were counseling offices right next to a casino, or at least close by. I imagine the casinos would not like that, as that would, you know, good chance of taking away business. But I was just wondering if you've already approached that idea and just the results, what you've faced as feedback.
You know, I train and supervise, and Lori does too. We're the consultants that support, you know, counselors who are trying to get certified around the United States. And a lot of the counselors like you are trying a lot of different outreach efforts to draw people in. And it has been frustrating for the counselors to have these wonderful programs, mental health programs, and counseling support, some in private practice, and they find it very difficult to get folks. So no one, to my knowledge, has a counseling office. I haven't heard of that, but that's a very interesting idea. I would imagine that counselors are everywhere. If you think about it, in all of our Maryland state, there are counselors everywhere within like a mile, not necessarily in the rural areas, which is the challenge, out in some of the Western Maryland areas or even on the Eastern Shore. But I think the big challenge that counselors have had to do is what I was trying to emphasize about the outreach, going out and getting the message out to people where they live. People where they live, you know, and starting in those communities and talking to people. One initiative, we had Dr. Wanda Bernard speak at our conference last year. So one thing they did in Nova Scotia was they had table talks where they had people in neighborhoods who were willing to invite some of their close friends and family members just to sit down in their house and for me or you to be able to share some information and ask them, you know, do you gamble, do you not? Do you find that you are having challenges with gambling or other challenges with other mental health issues? How can, you know, how about sharing this information? And those informal kinds of opportunities seem to be working better. And going into faith places. And, you know, for example, I did a training of the lay leaders. I did like a 3-part training where first I asked the pastor or clergy person what were the issues in that community. Substance abuse, gambling, trauma, child behavioral issues, and then designed a layperson's training where I could help them understand those issues because they're talking to the people in that body of faith or spiritual place, and then taught them how to have the conversation, and then gave them a list of who they could call for help in their catchment area or in their community area. And that worked well, and had them actually practice and do some role plays. And the main thing is teaching people how to stay in the conversation and how to journey with the person who's in crisis or who's in trouble until they get transitioned and even after. So I think that's a really great point you're making. I don't think we're seeing that enough.
And I don't think the casinos would necessarily oppose it. I mean, we would have to have a conversation about how it would happen because, again, our purpose is the same. If someone has a problem, we don't want them there in our casinos gaming. We want them to get the help that they need.
Yeah, I want to reinforce that, working with all the compliance officers of all the casinos. Usually when I even come up with an idea, because I was on the problem gambling side running a council for 6 years, 7 years, that we usually can come to something where it is workable. Like now, we have our Maryland Lottery and Gaming staff in the back of the house so that we can get people to sign up for this voluntary program, work that out. They come out on the floor, you know, they're there all the time. And I think, you know, as we go further, depending on where or what direction the casinos go in, I do think it is a talkable point. I don't think it's off the table.
Okay.
Okay, hopefully we can make the answer to this quick. All right, I go to Maryland Live. I want a voluntary exclusion. I don't want to lose any more than $100. Okay, I get to $85 and I win a jackpot. I'm wondering, is that by design or what's the process?
Takes care of that.
How do you track me and what happens in that instance?
So we do not have, as most people think, there is not a person sitting in the room that looks down and turns that switch on and off based on who's sitting there. That is definitely not how it works. There is the chip, the random generator chip. So we don't know who's sitting there or when it will happen. So unfortunately, we have no way of controlling that.
Yeah, you could sit at that same seat for 48 hours and not hit a jackpot. I mean, I know it's your lucky seat, but really should get up and go enjoy a meal.
But I do hit the jackpot, but I've told you already by my exclusion, I don't want to lose any more than $100. If I'm at 85, are you going to shut me down when I get to 100 or what?
We have no way to shut you down.
Oh, okay.
Can't.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you
We're
all
done.
very,
Thank
very
you.
much. Enjoy lunch.